The relaunch comes from the fact that last year the Syllabus committee was dissolved. I think with the dissolution, it meant that there was no way to comply with the regulations that requires that Samsa establishes a Syllabus committee that advises it on the workings of the maritime education training system, especially when it comes to seafarer training systems. So what we had to do to re-establish it was to set the rules of engagement up front through what we eventually called the constitution of the Syllabus committee. We published that for comments with our stakeholders, and we also ran a workshop on it where we tried to explain our thoughts on different articles or sections of the constitution, and we've made adjustments with to the constitution after that. I think the biggest of the adjustment was that in the workshop that we ran was that part of the problem was that we didn't have the code of conduct for members. So it's possibly the single biggest addition to the constitution as we published it right in the beginning, the draft, the very first draft. So majority of it was mostly around how we put ourselves forward, the grammar and the language that we used. We had to do a lot of adjusting so that it allows us to communicate effectively what we want out of the Syllabus committee. So I think the function or the purpose of the Syllabus committee is to develop the training standards for seafarer certification. And when we say seafarer, we're meaning it in the broadest of terms, whether that person works on vessels in port operations, whether it's on fishing vessels, and other generally seagoing vessels. So all of them need to be trained in accordance with the standards established by Samsa. So those standards have to be established, have to be maintained, and kept up to date by Samsa together with the stakeholders that we've got in the industry. That's why we've tried our very best to make sure that all perspectives are brought in. The public sector perspective, which Samsa brings forth as the leader, and we've got role players from the industry, the likes of the fishing industry employer organizations. We've got the seafarers through the Society of Master Mariners and Simina as well. And we're hoping that these others that we don't know will come forward. But at the moment, those are the broad stakeholders. But least on that, last but not least, is the training providers, because without them, all these training standards would not find meaning. So they are also part of the conversation. So you've got this mainly 4 different aspects that comes together and say, this is how we train seafarers in South Africa. And at the end of the day, myself representing Samsa, I have to take all of this in and incorporate it in such a way that it can be implemented. And so that's in summary what this relaunch is about.
Just out of interest, very briefly, what all constitutes the service providers of to whom this syllabus will be dependent?
Yeah, I think the training providers vary greatly. So Then you've got public higher education institutions that offer either marine engineering or nautical science diplomas or degrees, whatever the case may be. You've got private training providers who offer basically just the academic learning. We're encouraging or trying to get them to be registered with the Department of Higher Education so that they can issue a proper qualification. At the moment, that qualification is only recognized towards certification for by Samsa. And then we've got a few non-profit organizations, but we've also got companies that provide training on board ships for cadets and ratings alike. So we've got a broad spectrum of training providers, not just one type of training provider. So, and when they walk through the room, you might have we are all equal essentially. We put our thoughts on the table, and the team from Samsa's job is primarily to say which is to identify those ideas that we're going to implement and put them forward as best as we can.
So now, how many members can be expected to be inducted into the committee this week?
The responses that we've got just excluding Samsa personnel that are by virtue default members. We are looking at about over 20, about 23, but we also have people who have been in contact with us about coming that did not formally respond to the invitation. So we are in total, inclusive of Samsa members, the syllabus committee's got 35 standing members, and but it's open to everyone. So there's people who have inquired if they can come on a specific date, just because there's something that they think they can contribute, or there's things that they think they can learn out of it. So it's a balance. I think the induction is mostly for standing members, because then they're the ones that we expect to contribute over the long term to the processes that we're implementing. So that's basically the idea that we've got.
So not only do we have an induction, but we also have an adoption of the Constitution.
Yes.
And I think there is some more serious work that you'll be doing also as catch up. That you know, so, this year you've got some deadlines. Can you talk to that?
Yeah. So we've got obviously we've shared the draft constitution and the code of conduct, and the kind of code of conduct that we've developed is the kind that needs to be signed by members. So you basically expect everybody to sign, representing whoever nominated them. So that's all part of it tomorrow, and we will also allow an opportunity to do final editorials if there is any changes. So and then after that, each one will get a copy and we'll sign it, and the secretary of the committee will take those. Beyond that, tomorrow, then the second and the third day, we're going into what maybe I would term the ordinary business of the syllabus committee. So there's 2 full days of deliberations that we'll be going over. There's and those we will be able to we will be doing over the 2 days. I think the deadline we've set is with regards to the training standards for fishing vessel personnel. So we would like to have those implemented no later than 31st of December this year. But we also don't underestimate the work that needs to be done. So we don't think that we will be able to complete all the training standards in these particular sessions that we're having. But we've got tools that will allow us to work between this meeting and the next meeting, so that between Samsa and different stakeholders, we've got we can get those training standards completed and reviewed, and when we go to the meeting that we're likely to have towards the end of the calendar year, it's a matter of the working group that we create to presenting back what they've done, and then we can be able to adopt those as it is. So we want those completed, but we are not trying to. We understand the difficulty of the process. So whereas we think it can be done, but we also know that we must be cautious in our optimism that we shouldn't force completion so that we've achieved the deadline. The outcome of those training standards must be things that we are confident that they can be implemented. They can be, once implemented, they can be things that are achievable by training providers. The students that need to go there can also be able to to learn the outcomes fairly and be assessed fairly, and to achieve a fair mark fairly as well.
Wonderful. One final question from me, and you are at liberty to answer the question, but it relates to TVET institutions.
Yes.
I do know that at some point, sometime in about 2017, 2018, Samsa did work on about 9 to 15 modules with industry. Where are we with TVET colleges insofar as education and training?
Yeah, I think the only college that's really taken some of those modules that we worked on was Umfolozi. I know in discussions with our industry development colleagues, that's something that we need to be able to push further and further, so that you've got colleges, as many colleges as we possibly can, so that we can, for all, let's call it occupational qualifications, there's no reason why they shouldn't be offered in a TVET, in our TVETs. I think one of the great difficulties for the TVETs is finding people with suitable skill and experience, and also the desire, because there's a resources required to establish as a maritime training provider are quite extensive, and you get the lowest throughput probably compared to any other. So when you invest in it, it has to be for the long term, and it has to be, you have to be understanding that the likely output or throughput of having an X amount of money is not going to be the same if, say, for example, in a computer course or something like that. So it's that difficulty, I think, that most TVETs are finding. But I think maybe my other colleagues are better suited to answer that question.
I said finally, I'm saying finally now. You're launching on the day South Africa joins the global community in celebrating Seafarers Day. Is that a coincidence?
Not a coincidence. It was actually our plan was that when we would go from celebrating the Day of the Seafarer into the Syllabus Committee. But I think the timing of the Syllabus Committee unfortunately takes us away from those festivities. We were looking forward to that. But I think possibly the best way of celebrating them is by saving them, and that's what the Syllabus Committee does. So it's really, I wish I could be there, but I'm also glad I will be doing what I will be doing in a way. Yeah.
That's great. So thank you very much. I truly appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right.